The folder has been in the bottom drawer of Harold's old desk for 16 years. I haven't opened it in maybe 8. But yesterday afternoon the phone rang, and when I picked it up, I heard a voice I haven't heard in almost a decade say only, "Mom, it's Robert." I didn't say anything for a long moment. I just stood there in the kitchen with the receiver in my hand, looking at the steam rising off the kettle, and I felt my chest tighten in a way it hasn't tightened in years. He said it again, "Mom," as though the word still belonged to him, as though saying it could make 16 years dissolve. I told him I needed to think. I told him I would call him back. And then I hung up the phone and I sat down at this kitchen table where I'm sitting now, and I didn't move for a long time. This morning I went to Harold's desk and I pulled out the folder. Yellow now, the edges soft. The legal seal still pressed into the first page like it was stamped yesterday. Grace versus Grace. My name on both sides of it. My name is Evelyn Grace. I am 92 years old, and when I was 76, I sued my own son. I did not lose. I did not win either, not in the way people think you win, but I did what needed to be done. And I am telling you this story today because I have lived 16 years past it, and I have not for a single morning regretted it. If you are watching this, I imagine you are sitting somewhere with something inside you that hurts. Maybe a child, maybe a parent, maybe someone you love who has done something you cannot reconcile with the version of them you carry in your heart. I know that look. I have worn it. I am not here to tell you what to do. I am only here to tell you what I did and what it taught me and what I wish someone had told me before the worst of it. So let me tell you what happened. Robert is my middle child, my only son. He was born between his sisters in the spring of 1961, and I remember thinking, when they laid him in my arms, that I had never seen anything so serious. Catherine had been a loud, gulping baby, all need and no patience. Diana would come along a few years later and laugh before she could speak. But Robert looked at me as though he were already calculating, as though, even at 3 minutes old, he was figuring out where the exits were. He was a beautiful child, a clever child, the kind of boy who organized his toy cars by color and grew angry when his sisters disturbed the order. I once found him at 4 years old taking apart Harold's alarm clock with a butter knife, and when I asked him why, he told me he wanted to know what was making the noise. Not what time it was. What was making the noise? He wanted to see the mechanism. He always wanted to see the mechanism. Top of his class, quiet at the dinner table, engineering school by 18, an MBA by 24. Harold used to look at him and shake his head in that way he had, the half-smile of a man who recognized something he couldn't quite explain. Harold was an engineer too, but Harold was an engineer who whistled while he worked. Robert was an engineer who measured. By the time Robert was 40, he was a vice president of something I never fully understood, somewhere far away. He came home for Christmas, sometimes Thanksgiving. He sent practical gifts, a set of carbon monoxide detectors one year, a digital thermostat another, a thing for sharpening kitchen knives. He called on Mother's Day for exactly 7 minutes, and I knew it was 7 minutes because Harold timed it once just to see. I learned after a while not to be hurt by any of it. I told myself that this was who he was, and that loving him meant loving him in the shape he came in. That's a thing mothers tell themselves. Some of it is wisdom. Some of it is the bargain you make so you don't fall apart. When Harold turned 78, his health started to slip. Nothing dramatic at first, just the small surrenders that come with age. The cane he hadn't needed before. The pills lined up on the kitchen windowsill in a plastic organizer with the days of the week on it. The afternoons in the armchair instead of the workshop. We had some money. Not a fortune, but enough. The house was paid off. Harold's pension was steady, and there was a small parcel of land my own father had left me when he died, a piece of farmland up north, not worth much in any market sense, but precious to me, because my father had walked it with me when I was a girl and taught me the names of birds. 40 acres of nothing much except memory. Robert came home one weekend in the fall and sat us down at this table. He said he was worried about us. He said the world was getting complicated and we weren't getting any younger and we needed to think practically. He had documents. He always had documents. He had researched. He had prepared. He suggested that we transfer certain things into a trust that he would manage on our behalf for our protection. He used the words tax efficiency. He used the words probate. He used the words for your own good. I want you to understand something. I am not a woman who was raised to read legal documents. My mother taught me how to bake bread, how to mend a hem, how to say grace before a meal. I went to 2 years of college, and then I met Harold, and I became a teacher in a small school, and then I became a mother. And I did not, in 50 years, sit across from a lawyer in any room with my name on the door. So when my son, my serious son, my son with the briefcase and the calm voice and the words tax efficiency sat across from us at this very table and told us to sign, I signed. Harold signed. We signed without reading every line because he was our son, and you do not read every line when it is your son. That was the first mistake. I will tell you now, and I will tell you again before this is over. You read every line. You read every line, even when it is your son. You read every line, especially when it is your son. Within 18 months, Robert had sold the farmland. He did not ask. He did not tell us beforehand. He sent a letter to his own parents on the cream-colored stationery of his company, his name embossed at the top. He explained in 3 crisp paragraphs that the property had been a depreciating asset and that the sale price had been favorable and that the proceeds had been reinvested in a vehicle that would generate better returns. He used the word vehicle. About the field where my father had taught me the names of birds, I sat in this kitchen holding that letter, and I felt something inside me that I had not felt in many years. It was not sadness. Sadness comes from grief, and grief is something you do with a thing you've lost. This was different. This was the feeling of being moved, like a piece of furniture in your own house, like someone had decided where you belonged and rearranged the room around you without asking your name. I showed the letter to Harold. Harold read it twice. He set it down on the table. He sat for a long while without speaking, and then he said something I have carried with me for 30 years. He said, "He didn't even think we'd be angry. That's the part that hurts. That is the part that hurts. I want to be careful here, because I am 92 now, and I have learned how easy it is to make your children into villains in the telling. Robert was not a monster. Robert was not cruel. Robert genuinely believed he was helping us. He genuinely believed that because he was younger and educated and successful and male, he was better equipped to make these decisions than the 2 old people who had raised him. He had not thought of us as people who could be wounded by being managed. He had thought of us as a situation he was responsible for, a situation he wanted to handle efficiently. This is the thing I most want you to understand because it is the heart of everything I am going to tell you today. Some of the deepest betrayals in this life will come from people who love you, who believe in the quiet chambers of their own heart that they are doing right by you. And the wound is not less because the intention was clean. The wound is more, sometimes, because you cannot even hate them properly. You have to keep loving them while you bleed. I tried at first to reason with him. I called him. I asked him to come home. I told him we needed to talk about what he had done. He came home. He sat at this table. He was patient with me, the way you are patient with a confused person. He explained again about depreciating assets. He explained again about vehicles and returns. He explained that he understood I had sentimental attachment to the land, but that sentiment was not a financial strategy. He said all of this without raising his voice. He said all of this looking at me with my own eyes, which he inherited from me and which had looked at me with love 1,000 times when he was small. I asked him to give us back control. I asked him to dissolve the trust. He told me gently, the way you might tell a child that the dog has died, that the trust was working as intended, and that dissolving it would be premature, and that I should trust him. He said the word trust like it was a building he had constructed, like it had walls and a roof and was waterproof. When he left that weekend, Harold and I sat in this kitchen and we cried, both of us, two people in their late 70s, crying at a kitchen table because their son had not done anything illegal, but had done something that broke something between us that we did not yet know how to name. The next morning, Harold told me to find a lawyer. I want to tell you about that lawyer because she matters. Her name was Frances. She was maybe 45 years old, gray streak in her hair, no nonsense in her face. I had picked her name out of a directory because I liked the sound of it. When I sat in her office for the first time and tried to explain what had happened, I started crying. I am not a woman who cries in front of strangers. I had not cried in front of a stranger in maybe 50 years, but I cried in that office. And Frances pushed a box of tissues across the desk, and she said, "Mrs. Grace, what you are describing is something I see every week. And the fact that it is your son does not make it less real. It makes it harder, but it does not make it less real." I have thought about that sentence so many times in the 16 years since. It does not make it less real. We filed. I want you to understand what it costs to file a lawsuit against your own child. It is not paperwork. It is a thing you do with your body. You sign your name, and the moment you sign it, you have crossed a line you cannot uncross. You have said with the law as your witness that the bond between you and the person you raised is not enough to resolve what has happened. You have said, this requires a judge. You have said, my own son will not listen to me, so I will make him listen to a stranger in a robe. The night before we filed, I sat up until 2 a.m. Harold had gone to bed. I was alone in this kitchen with a glass of water I wasn't drinking and the papers in front of me. And I asked myself, am I doing this out of anger? Am I doing this out of pride? Am I doing this because I cannot stand to lose? I asked myself every hard question I could think of. And what I came to at 2 a.m. was this. I was not doing it for the land. The land was already sold. The money was in some accounting fine. I was doing it because if I did not do this, I would never again be a full person in my own family. I would be a project. I would be a situation. I would be something Robert managed. And I had lived 76 years as a person, and I was not willing to spend whatever years I had left being a situation. So I signed. The case took 14 months. 14 months of waiting rooms with chairs upholstered in the color of weak tea. 14 months of phone calls from Frances about disclosures and discovery. 14 months of Robert's lawyer, a man whose name I will not say even now, sending us letters that referred to me as the claimant, not Mrs. Grace, the claimant, as though I had become a category. There was a deposition. I sat in a small room with a stenographer and Robert's lawyer and Frances, and I answered questions for 4 hours about my own life, about my marriage, about my finances, about whether I had any history of confusion, whether I had ever forgotten where I was, whether I had ever called any of my children by the wrong name. I sat in that chair, and I answered each question slowly and clearly, because I understood what he was trying to do. He was trying to make me old. He was trying to make me incompetent on paper. He was trying to suggest to a future judge that perhaps this dear old woman had simply misunderstood. Perhaps the dutiful son had only ever acted in her best interest. Perhaps she had forgotten what she signed. When it was over, Frances walked me out to the parking lot, and she said, "You did beautifully." And I said, "I have been a teacher for 30 years. I know how to be tested." She laughed. It was the only time I laughed during that whole 14 months. Robert was furious. Catherine was furious, not at Robert, at me. Diana cried on the phone for an hour at a time, 3 nights a week. The grandchildren did not know what was happening, only that something had gone wrong in the family they could not be told about. Christmas that year was the worst Christmas of my life. Robert did not come. He sent a card, just a card, signed only with his name, no love, no mother, just Robert. We did not win in the sense of getting the land back. That was gone. We did win in the sense that the trust was dissolved, that Robert was removed from any authority over our affairs, that what remained of our assets came back into our hands. We won what was, by then, a technical victory, a paper victory, the kind you carry home in a folder and put in the bottom drawer of your husband's desk. What we lost was harder to count. Robert did not speak to me for 4 years, not at Christmas, not on my birthday, not when Harold went into the hospital the first time for his heart, not when Lily, his own niece, graduated high school. He came to Harold's funeral. He sat in the back in a suit too dark for the season. He left before the reception. He did not hug me. He did not say a word. He nodded to me once, on his way out, the kind of nod you give a hostess at a party where you don't really know anyone. For a long time, I thought maybe I had been wrong. That is the truth. I will say it plainly. For maybe 2 years after the case ended, I lay in bed at night and wondered if I had been a foolish old woman defending a piece of ground that nobody else cared about. I wondered if Harold had only supported me because he loved me and not because he believed in it. I wondered if I had cost my husband his son's last years. That thought, more than any other, kept me awake. The idea that Harold had died with his only son angry at him because I had insisted on a principle. That thought came for me at 3 a.m, more nights than I want to admit. But then Harold died, and in the months after, I started to understand something I had not understood before. Harold left me a letter. He had written it about a year before he died, and his sister had been keeping it, with instructions not to give it to me until the dust had settled. She brought it to me in the spring, 6 months after the funeral. In the letter, he wrote about many things. He wrote about how grateful he was for our life together. He wrote about his hopes for our children and grandchildren. He wrote about a fishing trip we took in 1979 that he said was the happiest week of his life, which surprised me because at the time I remembered him complaining about the mosquitoes. And he wrote, near the end, about Robert. He wrote that he had been proud of me for filing that case. He wrote that he had been proud of himself, too, for standing beside me. He wrote that the worst thing that had happened in his life was not losing the farmland. The worst thing was the moment he realized his son had stopped seeing him as a man and started seeing him as a problem. He wrote that watching me refuse to accept that, watching me insist on being a person, had reminded him of why he had married me 52 years before. I read that letter in this kitchen, in the armchair by the window, where Harold used to read his paper in the morning. I read it 3 times, and then I cried for an hour. And when I was done crying, something in me settled. Some long argument I had been having with myself went quiet. I had not been wrong. What I want to tell you, the thing I most want you to hear, is this. There is a kind of love that does not respect you. It exists. It is real. It can come from the people who would, without thinking twice, run into a burning building to save you. They love you. They would die for you. But they do not, in the texture of daily life, see you. They see what they think is best for you. They see what they have decided you need. They see a version of you that lives in their head, and they relate to that version, and they call that love. It is love. I am not telling you it is not love. I am telling you it is not enough. You can be loved your whole life and still be invisible. You can be cared for and still be erased. There is a way that people manage you with kindness, and you can spend 40 years inside it before you understand what has happened to you. I learned that at 76, in a lawyer's office, while a woman I had just met pushed a box of tissues across a desk and told me that what was happening to me was real. Something else I came to understand, and this took longer, much longer, is that forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. I think I forgave Robert long before he forgave me, and I think he never quite forgave me at all. Forgiveness is something you do inside your own chest. It is the decision to stop carrying the weight of someone else's failure as if it were yours. Reconciliation is something two people do together, and it requires both of them. I can forgive my son, and I have. I cannot reconcile with my son because reconciliation requires him to acknowledge that what he did was harm, and he has never in 16 years used the word harm. He has used the word misunderstanding. He has used the word disagreement. He has, through Catherine, used the words water under the bridge. He has never said, I hurt you. And without that, we are not reconciling. We are only pretending. That is a sorrow I will carry to my grave. I will not pretend otherwise. There is no version of this story where I get my son back. There is only the version where I kept myself. And then there was this. The people who criticize you most loudly are not always the ones who understand the situation best. Catherine was furious with me for years. She is my eldest, my protective one, and she could not understand why I would not just let it go. She would say, he meant well, Mama. She would say, families don't do this. She would say, you're going to die alone if you keep this up. She loved me. She wanted me to soften. But what Catherine was really asking, though she didn't know it, was for me to make her comfortable. She did not want to live in a family where this kind of thing was named out loud. She wanted me to absorb it, the way women in our family have absorbed things for generations, and to keep the peace. I did not keep the peace. I have not regretted that either, but I will tell you, the cost of refusing to absorb a thing is that the people around you have to grow up, and not all of them want to, and the ones who don't want to will be angry with you for a long time. Catherine has, in the years since, come around in pieces. She has not apologized for the things she said. She does not have it in her. But she calls more now. She comes to lunch on Sundays sometimes. She doesn't bring it up. She brings flowers instead. That is her language. I have learned to receive it. Diana, my youngest, was different. Diana cried about it for months while it was happening, and she called me every other day in the middle of the case and begged me to drop it. But Diana also, 3 years after the case ended, sat with me on this porch on a summer evening in July and said, Mom, I think I understand now. And she did. Diana is dramatic, but Diana feels things in their full size. She had needed time to feel her way into it. Once she got there fully. Now she is the one who calls Robert and tells him to call me. She is the one who has spent 10 years trying to build a bridge that nobody else will help her build. I don't know if she will succeed, but I love her for trying. The grandchildren grew up. Some of them know the story. Some of them don't. Sophie, who is 25 now, asked me about it 2 years ago. She had heard pieces. She wanted to hear it from me. We sat at this table, and I told her the whole thing, the way I am telling it to you now, and she was quiet for a long time when I was done. And then she said, "Grandma, I think I would have done what you did." And I told her, "I hope you never have to, but if you do, I hope you do." James, who is 23, has not asked. He is closer to his father, who is Robert. He visits me, but we do not talk about it. I have made my peace with that. The young have a right to find their own way to the truth, or to never find it. That is not for me to force. Noah is 17 and Clara is 15, and they come for Easter most years, and they are good with their hands and gentle with each other, and that is all I will say about them, because they are still becoming. Oliver is 12 and only wants to talk about computers, and I am happy to listen, because what does a grandmother do if not listen to a child explain a thing she does not understand, and nod and ask one more question? And Rose is 8. She does not know any of this yet. She will know someday. She is the youngest of all of them, the surprise, born when I was 84. She comes to see me in the summers, and she sits where you are sitting now, and she draws pictures of birds and tells me about her friends at school. The other day, she asked me what my favorite color was. I had to think about it. Nobody had asked me that in maybe 40 years. I told her green. She said hers was orange. We agreed they would look terrible together. She laughed for a long time. Children laugh in a way that you forget exists when you have lived alone for a long time. Sometimes, when she is here, I think about what I would tell her if she came to me at 30 or 40 or 60 with the same problem I had. I think I would tell her this: the hardest people to hold accountable are the people you love most. Because love makes you generous. Love makes you doubt your own perception. Love makes you say, well, surely he didn't mean it that way. Love makes you bargain. Love says, if I just explain it better, he will understand. Love says, if I just wait a little longer, this will resolve itself. Love says, peace is more important than truth. But peace built on a lie about yourself is not peace. It is silence, and silence rots a person from the inside out. I have seen it. I have seen women in my generation become small inside their own families because they could not bring themselves to say the thing that needed to be said. They did not want to make a scene. They did not want to be the difficult one. They did not want to be the mother who sued her own son. I became the mother who sued her own son, and I would do it again. I would do it tomorrow. I will tell you something else, something I do not think I have ever said out loud, even to Diana, even to Sophie. The day the case ended, the day the judge read out the decision, I walked out of that courthouse with Harold, and we stood on the steps in the afternoon sun, and Harold turned to me and he said only, "Well, old girl." That was all. "Well, old girl." And he took my arm, and we walked to the car, and I felt for the first time in 2 years like I had been returned to myself, like the woman who walked across that parking lot was the woman my father had taught the names of birds, the woman Harold had married, the woman I had been before I became a situation. That feeling is what I am trying to describe to you. That is what I am trying to tell you is worth fighting for. Not the land, not the money, not the win, the walk to the car, the being a person again, now. Yesterday Robert called. He is 65 now. He has had, I am told, some health things of his own. Diana mentioned it to me last spring, carefully, the way she mentions things about him. I had not known he was thinking about me at all. And then yesterday the phone rang, and there was his voice. "Mom, it's Robert. I have not called him back yet. I am not sure I will. Or I am not sure when I will. I am sitting here this morning with the folder open on this table, with the original letter on top of it, the one about the vehicle, the one about the field, and I am thinking about what I want from the rest of my life. I think what I want is this. I want to live as I have lived for the last 16 years. I want to wake up in this house and make coffee in this kitchen and sit in Harold's chair and read the paper and call Diana on Sunday and have Rose draw birds at this table in the summers. I want to die in my own bed, in my own house, in the dignity I fought for at 76. And if Robert is part of that, I will welcome him on terms that respect who I am now. And if he is not, I will not be destroyed by it. I was destroyed once. I do not have to be destroyed twice. If you are watching this and you have something like this in your own life, a betrayal from someone who loves you, a quiet erasure dressed up as concern, a slow understanding that the people closest to you do not see you, I will tell you only what I wish someone had told me. You are allowed to be a person. You are allowed to be a person even to your own children. You are allowed to be a person until the very last day. The cost of refusing this is high. The cost of accepting it is higher. You will lose people. I want to say that to you plainly. You will. You may lose a child. You may lose a sister. You may lose a friend you have had since you were 19 years old. You will lose them, and you will grieve them, and the grief will be real. But what you will gain is yourself, and yourself is the only thing you carry through the door at the end of your life. Not the money, not the house, not the people who finally came around. Yourself. I am 92 years old. I live alone in the house I have lived in for 44 years. My husband has been gone for 11 years, and I miss him every morning when the coffee finishes brewing, because that was when he used to come down the stairs and put his hand on my shoulder without saying anything. My son has not been in this kitchen in 16 years and may or may not come back, and I have made my peace with both outcomes. My daughters are who they are, with all their love and all their complication. My grandchildren are coming up behind me, learning the world, some of them in ways I can see and some in ways I cannot. And the field is gone. It has been gone for 35 years. But somewhere inside me, my father is still walking it, telling me the names of birds, and that is mine. Nobody can sell that. Nobody can sign that away. That is what I learned, that some things you cannot lose, even when you lose them, and some things you cannot keep, no matter how hard you fight. The trick of a long life, I think, is learning the difference, and being willing to fight for the ones that are worth it, even when the person on the other side of the courtroom has your eyes. I have to go now. The coffee is getting cold. I have a phone call to think about. Thank you for sitting with me.